Hello there, fellow gamer. Get with the Potheads. It's me, your old pal, Campo, man. We're here.
You've
Show
got
with
to
no
sit
name.
down and think of
All
your own
right, tell him. You
idea.
tell him.
No, I was saying you need to think of think of an intro. You haven't thought of one yet for
Go
this whole
tell him.
thing.
Do your intro.
What my intros for Gamer Potheads. Well,
Yeah, well,
welcome, fellow
pretend.
RLG 2 people. My name is Puttyman. I'm here with Campo and
It doesn't roll
Lampo.
off
And
the tongue as good.
I know we got to think of a
All
name
right,
for you.
we're here. Show with no name. Putty and this guy.
I think it's actually called Show with No Name. Like literally, should we call it?
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Yeah.
I don't remember my own name. He's Putty.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about some overrated comic book movies. I've
I've never heard that comic
It's
movie.
like,
I've never.
you know what? I don't like you. We're not listing this time. We're just gonna have a small discussion about some movies that may be overrated. They might not be overrated in the sense that they have a high rating, but people in the movie community or the internet community seem to have high praise for these movies, and we might just not see it that way. So, you said you wanted me to start it off.
Yeah, you start off because
your microphone looks like a wrecking ball that's about to knock you in the head.
it's like a drop mic, so you got to remember it's got the whole.
I like it. It's kind of erotic.
Wow. Now everyone's gonna pay attention to my mic during the whole thing. Like,
I mean, I like it. It's a big set of balls just so to hit you in the face. Okay, so, so it started off. I think this is a movie that like gets awkwardly high praise. 300.
Okay, actually, that's a good startup. But if I was gonna say that, I would say the sequel because at least, I'll tell you why I actually like it, and that's because it's probably the most accurate outside of Sin City interpretation from a comic book.
And I'm okay with that. I agree. I think visually it's a very strong movie, which is something Zack Snyder does well. But in typical Zack Snyder fashion, there's almost no story. There's no character development. This movie's just a bunch of people fighting.
Well, I had nothing against Frank Miller, but that's kind of what the comic was too.
I mean, well, if you look at the other stuff, like if you look at Dark Knight and Year One and stuff like that, those are really well crafted. The Daredevil stuff that he did.
Well, Frank Miller still, it's not saying anything bad about Frank Miller, but when he did the 300, he was trying to make it his own compared to the actual 300. I don't know what they're fucking called. The whatever they were, the actual Spartans, yeah. And then he just made it his own version, which, you know, it felt like it was just a blood fest. It was basically him saying, okay, I want to make it a comic book form of blood fest. And once Sin City got huge, because you got to think, which another one might be in this list too, I can bring up, which if you really think about it, after Sin City, nothing against Frank Miller comics and movies, but they went downhill because you could, when you look at like 300, yeah, it's not as good as Sin City, of course. It's very much accurate, more accurate, or I say very accurate than the other comic book movies. But then after that, you had The Spirit, and oh my God, like where did we go wrong there? And that was the same situation where it was like Frank Miller was on this good moment with Sin City, but then all of a sudden every movie had to have that same flair, and it's like you gotta have to do your own thing. And I don't know, it just didn't seem. I don't know. I
agree. I agree.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess 300 would be the best overrated one, but it's just a gore fest, and I can understand why.
It's not a movie to the point. Like, I have to understand. I'm not even saying I don't like 300. Mm-hmm. It's just when people talk about 300, they remember it as like this epic movie. Because at the time it was so different. It was such a fresh idea. It looked so good, but when you watch it again, there's nothing there. It's literally just an empty shell that looks nice, which is like every single Zack Snyder movie.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, I can agree on that too. Even though I do have some like good and bad things when it comes to some of Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder is one of those ones where he has a good idea, like for me at least, he has a good idea for a movie, and like he'll start up the movie like, oh, this looks good, and it's like you could tell where it was like, oh, that looks good, that looks good. Whoa, stop. Snyder, stop! And suddenly he's just stacking stuff. Like he's like, oh, I could do more. And it's like, Snyder, now you're just getting too excited.
Yeah, and it's like he'll start skipping story elements just because he wants to get to the next cool looking shot.
Yeah,
and he has good ideas. Like sometimes he'll bring things up, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe how good those ideas that he has are. But then he never executes.
Well, prime example is like going back to Batman versus Superman. Batman versus Superman is a prime example, actually. If we're going to talk about overrated films and everything, that's a perfect one. Batman versus Superman was one of those films that, in it, when they introduced Wonder Woman, it was amazing. When you had the parts with Batman versus Superman, I actually liked it. You know what I mean? I liked that quarrel. But then all of a sudden, he was like, "Oh, but we got to get Lex Luthor in there, and we got to get Doomsday." So of course, Lex Luthor was like, "Hey, I'm here. Look at me," and I'm like, "Fucking shut up and get out of the
Oh, the
frame."
worst
Yeah,
interpretation ever.
yeah. And
Like,
then
I
all of
would
a sudden,
rather have Superman 4 fucking Lex Luthor than
yeah,
that.
that's my point. It's like he goes over the top. If he would just said Batman versus Superman and kept it like that, and then maybe bring in Wonder Woman like later, she's like, "You two need to stop, and we need to get together." And boom, Justice League promo. I'm like, all right, that was cool. You know what I mean? You got her to stop the fight. That brought an idea of maybe Doomsday at that point, like, oh, Doomsday's coming, and then boom, end the film. No, it had to literally have all that, and then it was like, oh no, we still got to have the Doomsday fight. It's like, why? Can't we have an epic fight with Batman and Superman? We can have that fight last longer, but he couldn't. He couldn't. It had to be short and sweet so he can get to the next big thing. And that's a prime example. I guess Zack Snyder is a good example of overrated.
Yeah, and okay, there's a thing too. Other than 300, I don't know if any of his movies were good or overrated. I like how I did that, but like critic-wise, they're not overrated. But I think people in the community have this weird praise for him. Like people actually think Batman vs Superman is like an amazing movie, and
Right.
if and my argument's always about the comic books, and people always have these retorts that are like, "Oh well, yeah, but I read comics too, and it's so comic book accurate." Yeah, it's accurate in the sense that it looks like a comic book, but it doesn't feel like it. Superman has never been dark.
No.
Zero times until
Well,
like modern.
he did one time. Remember when he died and he came back and he did the whole split? That kind of gave him a dark edge there for a little bit, though.
I'm
But
sweating so much. It's so hot in here. Oh my god.
he's like, I can't talk about these comic books like this,
I
bro. It's
can't,
making
bro.
me
I'm
sweat.
literally drenched in sweat. We left the heat on all weekend in the freaking studio, and it's like scorch show.
But well, there you go. The talking about overrated comic books is making you sweat. That's the thing, okay? But no, I again, 100%, I agree in that situation, and I think we would just say in general, anything Zack Snyder would be overrated.
It's divisive
Yeah,
because
exactly.
people either love it or hate it. There's
Yep.
not really like I might be the rare middle ground that likes those movies because it's DC based, but I
Mm.
don't like anything else about it.
Well, see, here's the thing, and this is the same situation like we talk about when it comes to DC in general, because DC kind of does this thing, which only time I could say they didn't lose track would be Christopher Nolan, but I actually would say Christopher Nolan is the reason why they didn't go off track with those movies, because with Christopher Nolan, he was actually said, he was one of those people that said, I don't mind, I don't mind doing the trilogy as long as it's on my terms, but I think they even still wanted him to come back for a fourth movie, and he was like, no, I'm done. This is it. I'm not going to over exaggerate like you guys want to or anything like that. And that's what DC tends to do. They get excited
There's
about something.
That's a good point. There's a really really good. I don't know if it came off one of the special editions of the Blu-rays or something, but it's on YouTube on the Warner Brother channel. It came out recently. I watched it last night. That's where I heard about Zack Snyder having good ideas. It's a movie based about behind the scenes of the three making the
I
trilogy,
watched that actually
and
on
it was
YouTube just
so good. And
yesterday.
it's like they asked him to direct it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They wanted him to come in and like pitch his idea. So he went in and pitched an idea, and they're like within like 20 seconds of him pitching the idea, they were like, okay, you can do it.
Yeah. But what's really funny, they were still in there like, how can we get merchandise in there? He's like, really? No, this
Yeah,
is
he's
not what
like
this
no
movie's about.
merchandise. He didn't
Yeah.
want to do anything.
But
That's just
but I
smart.
yeah, but I did like that they did say, okay, but you got to have the Batmobile, and I think even Christopher Nolan was like, all right, you're kind of right about that one. You can't have a Batman film without having the
And then he even
Batmobile.
said after they made the Batmobile, it was like one of the key points of the movie, and it was like, yeah. Anyways,
Yeah,
we've completely changed this conversation.
yeah.
Um,
But
I'm
yeah,
gonna switch. I'm gonna switch here because I'm gonna bash over on your good friends over at Marvel.
okay.
I think this is like, this is a movie that I don't think is really bad either, but it's such a middle, like no effort was put into it. It's Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Okay.
People praise that movie like it's so fucking smart. Yo, there's nothing in that movie. There's not even a
Okay.
story.
Here's the thing. I see why people praise it, and what it is, and again, it's definitely the close relationship with I forgot his name. What is the director's name? Help me. What's the director's name?
James Gunn.
James
I
Gunn.
couldn't
Thank
hear
you.
what you were saying.
I was trying to figure out
Like,
the name of the
Richter?
director.
You're like, what's
Yeah,
Richter's name? Like, who the hell's
director.
Richter?
But James Gunn, you know how he likes to put his brother in there, but he also has a close relationship with See, this is why I like to come prepared.
Michael Rooker, Chris Pratt.
Yeah. And see, Michael Rooker, the thing is I think that's the reason why people love it so much is because of that relationship with Michael Rooker's character with Chris Pratt's character of Star-Lord. And the thing is that's kind of, I think, why people love it so much. And I can understand because it gives you the feels and also brings in Rocket Raccoon in that way. But that's kind of where it gets lost to me, is where they're doing the whole father and son relationship because of his real father. And those characters have much bigger of an arcing story when it comes to the comic books. But I feel like it was kind of pushed in there. Again, for me, I'm a little bit opposite. I don't feel as it's that overrated. But when you're comparing it to the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, hey, heck yeah, you know what I mean? 100%. And then, you know, if I was going to look through Marvel and say stuff like, you know, when people are talking about overrated, and you bring up that one, I could say the same thing when it comes to Iron Man 3. Everyone praises, like I see a lot of people saying they love Iron Man 3. I did not like it.
It's fine.
I came out of there upset. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that were broken in there. I didn't like how some of the characters turned on. Pepper Potts and what happened to her. You know, in the comic book world, I can see that stuff happening, but even in the comic book world, I don't think I would have liked it. And it's the same thing over there. So, if Guardians of the Galaxy 2 would be yours, for me, it would be Iron Man 3 if you look at it that way. So, I agree with you, though.
To me, there's really, it's hard to say because maybe I feel ways about other movies, but I would say there's the two that stand out to me the most. And the reasoning for Guardians, just quickly, is because there's no villain in the movie. And what's his name? His dad, Ego?
Yeah, Ego, yeah.
He's not even established as the villain until like the last 20 minutes of the movie.
Well,
and at that point, you don't care.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And you don't get... If you took that movie and you cut it up and you just took the whole Rocket and Groot's... Or is it Rocket and Groot? Yeah. You took the Rocket, Groot, and whatever his name is, story, and that could have been its own movie and it would have been amazing. Because the other side, nobody gave a shit about the Star-Lord side if you're watching that movie.
Well, true. But I think that's what it was just to... It was a push for the whole family thing, because that's the major thing is you got to think these movies are targeted towards family. So like it's kind of like whole the situation with and I know this is a comic movie and I know I was bring me in this, but this is why I'm bringing it in, is like when you look at like the first or episode 1 of Star Wars, you know what I mean? A lot of people were mad about certain characters, which, you know, I don't have to name it. We know who we're talking about. And it's the same situation here. It's one of those things where it was targeted towards family. It used the family love because of the family of the actual Guardians. And when you separate two people that are considered father figures, one that just came in as a father figure and another that kind of has been a father figure for him, even though it really wasn't seen, it was just implied. That's kind of what they were going for with the whole thing, just to emphasize ego. But that's the problem. When they did that, they emphasized ego, but then it was like it didn't have enough time for us to really fall in love with the character, and then all of a sudden, you know, get fucking, excuse my French, get mad at the character for, you know.
What he just swore, that's a rare occurrence.
Yeah. So my point to the whole thing is I completely understand and establish that, you know what I mean? At the same time, you know, when I down it over being overrated compared to a lot of other movies, of course not. But if you're going to, an MCU, definitely, yeah, it would definitely be the only ones. Another reason why I think that holds a candle to me, though, is not even actually have anything to do with the plot of the story. It's just basically Stan Lee's cameo. When you see him as with the Watchers, it kind of like implies what exactly we've been always wanting it to be, that he was actually a Watcher all along in all the Marvel movies. You know what I mean? Even the old Marvel TV shows like The Incredible Hulk, or the Incredible Hulk movie, I should say. The old one, the old TV show one. Anyway, my point to the whole thing is they established him in that. And I think that's the reason why I can kind of overlook that and not look over the thing. And that's because they did bring out little points in it that made it great. But otherwise, the plot is bad. But again, if we were going to look at that, we could also say a lot of other MCU movies that people love that have a lot of plot holes.
Well, like I said, there's probably a few I could think of, but off the top of my head, the only other one I can think of, and this is a better movie to me than... Actually, it's probably on like the same level. Like, it's not like I gave them bad ratings or anything, but Spider-Man Homecoming... I mean,
really,
I don't connect with the story at all. Okay, the second one is such a much better story of like he doesn't have Tony anymore. He's trying to make it on his own. There's a lot of comedy that works. The backup comedy works. The fact that he trusted Mysterio so much and then Mysterio betrays him, and like all of this stuff is so makes sense in Homecoming, except for the parts between him and Michael Keaton, like the tension between them. There was nothing there. The comedy was different, and the story was so much about a teenager, and I can't relate to that. I'm not in high school. I don't understand that.
No, I get that, but again, I'm glad they did that. Here's the thing: when it comes to like, if we go back to like Sam Raimi Spider-Man's, when it comes to those, that was something even the spectacular ones. When it comes to any of those, the reason why for me it's the opposite. When it comes to Homecoming, why I feel like it's one of the most brilliant Spider-Man is because of that. Even though I can't connect to it at the age that I'm at, it's understandable because when I was reading those comics, Peter Parker was a teenager, and he grew up to go into college.
Yeah, just FYI, he's been a teenager for like 60
years.
Yeah,
but again, so is Bart Simpson, but we don't question that either, okay?
Bart Simpson's like grade 7.
Yeah, exactly. So if we're questioning that, then there's a lot of things wrong in the world. Cartman's still a kid. Keep that in mind, all right? And I mean, he should have.
He's also a murderer, so.
Yeah. But that's my whole point is that. There was like I always tell people when it comes to like now, what, that's actually one I can talk about right there is actually the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man. That one gets so much praise as well as like
the first one.
Yes,
I agree. That was my next movie I was gonna say.
Yeah, because that's the thing and that comes in with Homecoming. I actually like Homecoming better than the first.
I do too.
Spider-Man, and that's because the thing is I love when people make fun of the Power Rangers mask, but the thing is. One, when they decide to make the webbing come out of his hands, I'm like, all right, maybe they didn't want him to be super, super smart where he can make the webbing on his own. But then that also lost what made him Peter Parker. Like I can't remember his name now, but whoever plays Spider-Man in that movie, like he was a better Peter Parker than Andrew Garfield from
Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, Tobey Maguire. He was a better Parker than Andrew Garfield was. But at the same time, it didn't feel like a teenager. He felt like he should have been the college Spider-Man.
No, and they really didn't focus. I'll give them credit in Amazing Spider-Man for doing that. But the first movie wasn't about Peter Parker's school life or even his love life. Like, I know they focus on MJ a lot, but it was more about him personally. Like, if you notice, nothing's really about what's happening around him. It's more his personal, like, right on the dot, what's happening.
Well, but see, that's the reason why I also praise the Homecoming movies. Because, see...
well, why was the second one... The second one did the same thing, but better. That's my point, right?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, whenever I put all the Spider-Man movies together, here's the thing. I always look at it this way. When we have to compare the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, I look at it this way. Between Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire made a better Peter Parker. Andrew Garfield was way too cool to be Peter Parker, right? But when it comes to Spider-Man, I honestly felt Andrew Garfield was better.
Andrew Garfield still, I think, is the best Spider-Man.
Yeah, well, Tom Holland has that.
Tom Holland is the best mix of both.
Exactly.
But I don't think he's the best at either individually.
See, no, I don't know. See, again, I feel like he's a better Peter Parker in some way. Because the thing is, no one's really gave him the nerdy Peter Parker.
And but Tom Holland's still too way good looking to be
right. But they're always going to have someone good looking. That's the problem. They don't go straight on looking like Revenge of the Nerds geek. It's never going to happen, no matter how much we want it.
Well, even in the comics now, Peter Parker looks like that.
Well, yeah,
which is weird because in the 60s and stuff, he did look kind of nerdy. He had glasses and like
he's so fun. He was wearing the vest and everything. Like he was full on nerd with the pocket. Yeah, it was full on. But you empathize with it, and that's the thing. We heard the jokes both in Amazing Spider-Man and the Spectacular. I can't remember which one. Was the Spectacular that was the Andrew Garfield one, or were they called Amazing? They were called Amazing, right? Yeah. The Amazing Spider-Man, and of course the Sam Raimi Spider-Man. But again, you always have to think to yourself. The one thing is he's always cracking jokes. That's the reason why him and Deadpool always appealed to each other when it came into comic books. So to not get too much of that feel, like they pulled back on it so much, and then when Amazing Spider-Man came out, they definitely started bringing that more. And now, of course, there's more feel for Tom Holland. But then when you go back to the Sam Raimi one, they're like, oh, it's so great. And I'm like, yeah, but when you go back and look at it now, it's not as great as it might be. The second one, Spider-Man 2, is amazing. You know what I mean?
You know what's funny? Now it's my third. If you count, we should do a list on this. But if you count all the Spider-Man material that's out there, okay, for movies, I think Spider-Verse is the best.
Yep.
I think Far From Home is second, and then I think Spider-Man 2 is third, which Spider-Man 2 was my favorite for the longest time. But like when I went back and watched it, yes, it does hold up. Yes, it's still good, but there's so much extra cheese in there that feels so out of place. Like there's scenes that don't even need to be in the movie that are just stupid. And it's like, you didn't even need to put this, but now it sticks out like an eyesore of like how stupid this scene is.
Well, that's why I think I think a lot of it has to do with trying to create relationships. And I could think of some of the scenes you're talking about, like, you know, when he was always messing up when it came to MJ and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, the parts where Harry Osborn, you know, when they were pushing for that story of him wanting revenge against Spider-Man because of his father's death, I knew what they were pushing for, which in my eyes, it didn't get what I wanted. Like, I knew they were going from Green Goblin to Hobgoblin, which was amazing and exciting for me until we got to Spider-Man 3. It's like things were planned and set up, but there was just no, again, like I always say, the Kevin Feige way, where they have someone to watch over it and say, no, this has to be consistent because it's about to look horrible if you keep going that way. You know what I mean? And that's the thing, you know, Green Goblin, when they did the whole metal mask thing, and that whole situation, outside of it maybe being an armament, like a way of armor, he was already kind of super powered. So why not have it maybe like his pigment went green, so he can have. He's already got the face. You know,
that's
what I mean?
Funny that you said that, because that's something that I always thought too. Why, if he has like the superpowers that he has, because he does, he is powered. Why does he never use them?
Yes, exactly, and that's the same thing. Why is he wearing armor to protect himself? Like he's more of a bad version of Iron Man. You know what I mean? Because he has this flying vehicle, he's got his armor suit, but then we can't see it. Like literally, the guy that plays Norman Osborn is an amazing actor and has an animated face. I always thought he'd be a great Joker. So when I first heard he was playing, so when I first heard he was playing Green Goblin, my first thought, oh, okay, he's gonna go through the machine, his face is gonna turn green, and he's gonna be like, you know, Spider-Man, and he's gonna go straight on, like crazy looking in the eyes, and I'm like, this is gonna be awesome. All of a sudden, what do? Power Ranger mask, and I'm like,
that's a perfect example. That was so cheesy. That was just like Power Rangers.
Yeah, and it's like when you, and they even make there's even made a joke actually. I'm not gonna lie, I took that from Weird Al Yankovic. He actually has a song about the movie where he actually says we're in that Power Rangers outfit on. But anyway, I kind of stole that. I can't take claim.
Listen, you're allowed to steer Weird Al because no one knows what you're talking about.
but my point to the whole thing is there's always those missed opportunities to go, hey, we could do this. You know what I mean? And again, people still love it and they praise it. Oh, it's one of the best Spider-Mans. And I'm like, no, it's not even.
Let's not get it twisted. It's still good, but it's not as good as we once thought. It's okay. You know, a movie surprisingly holds up better, even though as many times as I watched it, I always kind of thought it's not that good, is the first X-Men. When you rewatch it now, somehow you're like, even with their cheesy outfits, it still kind of holds up. And like,
exactly.
I expected that to be worse, and I watched it again, and I was like, oh, it's kind of good.
Well, it's the same thing. Like X-Men 2 does the same thing.
X-Men 2 is amazing, though.
Yeah, it's when you get to X-Men 3, you start seeing, okay, now they're losing touch. Again, now it had to do with not having Bryan Singer.
Even Caps had X-Men 2 on his top 6 all-time superhero movies. So
yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna spitball out 4 more movies, and I'll let you go off a bit, and we'll just kind of have a discussion. So these are 4 other movies that I think are just not bad, but overrated. Okay? The first Superman movie.
It makes sense, but it's old, so I give it a pass.
The first Superman movie, Shazam.
Wait, did you say Shazam? Really? Okay, actually, I kind of disagree. I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Okay, well, hold on. We're gonna get into this. So, Superman, Shazam, Batman Returns, and that's by the community, not by critics, that it's overrated. And number 4, Deadpool 2.
Wow, you gotta really pull.
Well, I want to get it onto you, the discussion, right? I don't think. Once again, I don't think any of those movies are bad. I think that people give them praise that's not there. So, okay, if we're going to start on Deadpool 2 then, since you all clearly want to talk about it.
That's a sore subject.
If you're gonna ever try to tell me that the story is better in Deadpool 2 than Deadpool 1, you're crazy, because there's literally almost no story in the second one. It's just a stupid.
No, okay. Let me say this from first and foremost, okay? The first movie has always been the setup, okay? When it comes to Deadpool, saying that there's no story is just like in the comics.
But the first one is pretty solid.
Yeah, but because that's setting up. It's supposed to give you, because okay, I understand when you're talking about the first movie, it's just like in the comics. If you actually look in the old comics, Deadpool was started off as a serious character. You know what I mean? And then became that fourth wall breaking crazy character that you know and love. And that's the reason why I feel like things are kind of broken up, because when they talk about the X-Force setup, I think that's why it's missing. It's because I always felt like Deadpool was one of those movies that was setting up for a really good trilogy. And what happened was we got the first movie, we got the second movie. Then when Disney bought it, I think things have broken up and people have forgotten that there was going to be a third movie that was going to be basically like a trilogy. And this is the middle. This is where it sets up for X-Force, because you got to have the Cable and Deadpool.
Which I agree, that part of it works.
Yeah. And that's the reason why I feel like when it comes to that dynamic, the problem I actually feel is there was too much story. And I know you're gonna be like, what the heck? Well, here's my thing. The whole Vanessa thing, I feel like they're pushing way too much on that Vanessa story just to keep it grounded to where, couples can go and see it because it's a rated R film. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that can be like, we can still make it a date movie. You know what I mean? And that's what kind of hurt it to me, honestly. Is
it the first one or the second one you're saying?
The second one. Because
you lose the dynamic of his pain. Like, a lot of the movies derived off his pain. The beginning of the movie, he doesn't care anymore. And then you nullify all of that by bringing her back at the end.
No, I get that, but that's the joke. But that's my whole point. That's the only thing that I feel is wrong with the movie, is they killed her off to be a catalyst for him to go after.
Yes, exactly.
Somebody. Okay, here's the thing: just let him fucking be crazy.
Yes, that makes sense to me.
But that's the thing, though. We still got that. We still got that craziness. And when you just take out that little portion right there and just let him have the relationship, but let him still be the superhero thing. If they would have just kept that one thing about her dying out of there, I think that
or if they just left her dead.
Yeah, well, I mean, see, even with the left her dead, see, the thing is, I want her to be in the movie, and the reason I want her to be in the movie is because she ends up being Copycat. You know what I mean? And I want Copycat to be in the movie because imagine if we bring in Death. Wouldn't it be fucking hilarious? I'm cussing already. Hey, it's a Deadpool one. We're talking anyway. But anyway, bringing in a whole thing where maybe Copycat gets mad and jealous because now Deadpool has a thing for Death. And this also brings in a thing of where they can bring in Death, because that was a big problem that I also saw was they couldn't bring in Death because Death also had a part in the Infinity Saga. So there was always this whole broken part, which I'm hoping when it comes to the third one, they might bring in Death and bring in the whole thing of her as a character, and then maybe for some reason they have him falling in love with her, which it's going to sound out there because of the Vanessa thing. And that's where the thing, it's like it's based on how she is, how she's attractive, and she actually loves him for him. And yeah, that's super great. But the thing is in the comic book, he's a horn dog. It's just a straight up horn dog. You know what I mean? So we're never going to get that as long as they sit on the whole story of love, you know? And that's the only thing I can say I agree. But then again, that's the same problem they kind of did in the first movie.
It's just not as good as the first movie. I like the introduction of the characters, and obviously you've seen it, so I don't even have to ask. But the extended version of the second movie is far superior to the one that was in theaters.
But again, you can't. Have you seen some of those scenes? You can't put those in theaters without making like.
But I'm saying they weren't even going to release that. That was never planned. That they were going to release the extended version. They were going to leave it on the cutting room, and then they were like, "We might as well." Yeah,
well, again,
and without it, it's okay. So enough of that. Let's talk about Shazam.
Now, Shazam is the same situation with the Deadpool thing, but it's more of the I know what they were selling, and it's always been the same thing with the comic books. When it came to Shazam has always, in my eyes, been a tool to sell toys for kids or sell a superhero to kids, because every kid wants to be a superhero. That's what Shazam is, and you see it throughout the whole movie all the way to the end. It's all about kids becoming superheroes. And even my inner child was like, okay, this is really fun. But I also have to look at the aspect of it's not made for me. You know what I mean? It's 100% not made for me. So when you look at it as overrated, yes, as an adult, it's definitely overrated. As a kid, it's definitely made for them. That's the way I look at it.
Okay, so to me, I have an opposite opinion. Every movie to me is made for everybody. It just depends on your feelings towards a movie. So I get what you're saying because it's directed at kids. It shouldn't be, but it is. But I understand why your point is of why it is because that kind of makes sense. But it's still a comic book movie. You have released whatever DC six movies to that point. All of them are normal comic book movies. Children do not read comic books. Small children.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, this one starts out, plays out like a normal superhero movie, but then all of a sudden, in the last 20 minutes, it turns into a children's movie, like full on Scooby Doo's. I've been complaining about that for the longest time. It goes full Scooby Doo, and it looks terrible. And I don't hate the movie because I actually like had a good time. I love Shazam. It's a character I love. And it was a good experience. But compared to the comic books that we have been given recently about Shazam, it completely it followed the storyline, but it left the tone. Like there wasn't dark enough. Like it should have been a little bit darker.
Well, okay, you said as far as visually thing, I will say this. I understand where you're coming from the darker, but at the same time, again, because of the kid situation, I understand why they didn't. As far as the Shazam, the one thing I'm noticing, and I don't know why Warner Brothers has a problem with this, maybe they just need a new program. And I'm not being funny about that. I'm being true because looking at all the DC movies, because you look at Wonder Woman, and we even said this about the Wonder Woman 1984 trailer. One thing we're noticing a lot of that Warner Brothers is having problems with is they don't know how to do CGI properly. Not at all.
No.
It doesn't effectively look good at all in any of their movies. And I'm like,
Aquaman it did.
Yeah, Aquaman it did, but there wasn't that much to really have to do. You still had the basic characters there outside of the underwater situation. Aquaman, it worked good, but how do I explain this? But you still had those human characters to work off of. When you have a non-human character like Doomsday or the Seven Deadly Sins of Shazam, or what's his name from Justice League. You look at these characters, and then you look at the ones in Marvel when they have like Groot and everything. You know,
Justice League. I gotta agree. I agree with you on all of them, but like when you said that, I was like, I just thought about, I was picturing it in my head.
Yeah, and
what
then
the hell?
And then look at Wonder Woman. When Wonder Woman, the villain in Wonder Woman was horrible. The movie,
yeah, when he actually changes into Ares, his body looks fine, but there's something wrong with his face.
Exactly. I'm like, can you guys like maybe go talk to somebody at Universal or something? Get a little help here, because
that's why I'm hoping James Gunn's expertise of like having those characters when it comes to it. You see, the thing is, James Gunn's brother is like, there's a reason he brings him along, because he's turned into like one of the top tier, like what do you call it, motion capture people?
He's actually gotten as good as what's his name, the one
Andy Serkis.
Yeah, Andy Serkis, exactly.
And it's like that's no wonder you have him in all the movies, because he's useful.
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of people didn't know that he was actually the one. Wasn't he the one doing Groot and everything? Like
he did Rocket, I think.
Yeah, it was Rocket. Yeah, where he stand in for it, but it wouldn't do the voice. He just do the acting, and that's the thing, like the movement and everything. And that's the thing. When you again, I don't know if James Gunn can help that though, because the thing is James Gunn can sit there and edit it, but if he doesn't have somebody that could do the CGI up to par as Marvel or even Fox, you know what I mean? Fox has used CGI in the past, and it's turned out bad, but not as bad as what Warner Bros.
But
doing.
Fox has a weird. Okay, this is how weird it is. Okay, they have like two levels. They have like Days of Future Past and like X-Men First Class, where you're like, wow, I can't believe how good the CGI is in this. And then you have the first X-Men movies where it was like a new thing, so it looked good for what it was. But then you have like Origins, and like the last two movies are like, what the hell? In the movie that just came out, Dark Phoenix, some of the CGI looks like it's from 1995.
Oh,
and
I agree.
You're like,
I agree.
What?
And that's my point. It's like, at least there's some points, there's some, but that's my thing. When it comes to Fox, at least there's sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. You know what I mean? So far, when it comes to Warner Brothers, I've not seen one film that has been under the Warner Brothers label that uses CGI when it comes to any Warner Bros. Movie, or I should say DC movie, that has good CGI.
Man of Steel was okay. But Zack Snyder did too many close-ups on the CGI, and you can really notice it.
But then again, that's the same situation I'm always talking about. When you're working with human characters, it's kind of easier to do because you can do a copy and paste to that person and then put them in a different position. When you're doing something that doesn't exist in the real world, like Groot or Rocket, look at Rocket. Rocket looks amazing. When they show his back in the first Guardians of the Galaxy, the detail to all the surgery he's gone through and the hairs is amazing.
Well, just two big ones. Okay, well, there's probably a lot, like the Hulk.
Yeah.
But look at Vision and look at Tony Stark when he's wearing his Iron Man suit. Like, I know a lot of that's put on him, but a lot of it's also CGI. And they managed to like balance it in such a way that it's really good. And I mean, you see that in a lot of movies. Like Blade Runner had some of the best CGI I've ever seen, 2049. You had a few movies that came out recently where like it was intensely good. And these companies are making these $200 million movies, and yet there's movies that are coming out that are a quarter or half the price, and they're doing better CGI.
Well, that's a prime example why when we get back to the whole situation of like you said yourself, when we looked at Shazam, or like, for example, let's use Wonder Woman's example. Wonder Woman all the way through is good until you get to Ares' transformation. Okay?
Yeah.
And when you get to his transformation, then all of a sudden it falls flat because you could notice that. And that's the same situation. Like we were talking about when we talk about Batman versus Superman. I said there was a good movie outside of when you brought in those other additional characters. But I even in my head was able to go, you know what? I will ignore Lex. I can ignore him for a moment and just act like he's just some nutball there and he's not actually Lex. But then as soon as Doomsday came in and slid across the rocks and was like there, I was like, what am I looking at? It looks like someone crapped him out.
I just have to like point out, you keep saying things that I'm visually like seeing. That slide across the rocks, bro, that ground doesn't even feel like, it doesn't look or feel real. It just looks like he slid across sand. And I was like,
and that's my point, is that and see, when it comes to solid DC movies, I'm always looking at the ones that don't go over exaggerate on CGI. You know, the Dark Knight series, the Joker. You know what I mean? The Joker is a phenomenal one to look at. So,
why, you want to make a cameo? All right, we're gonna get a cameo.
You're gonna have to edit this. You have to edit this somehow.
No, this is coming hard. You see this cameo wave?
What's up, dude? I'm coming hard. How's it going?
He's always coming hard.
That's what they call me. Come hard. It's my nickname.
Wait, what's your
superhero movie that's underrated? Is
overrated?
Overrated is
Deadpool 2. Good call.
Deadpool in general.
Screw you, John.
How much longer are you guys gonna go for?
I don't know. A couple minutes. Can you
Why
leave?
Are you naked?
I told you I'm sweating.
Whoa! Why you said that? You got to leave that in the
I'm leaving that whole thing in, guys. I'm not wearing pants or underwear. I'm just letting it hang out.
But yeah, as far as overrated films, okay. So what was some of the other ones you named off to before that? Because we really went deep.
Superman, the first Superman, because I think even the second Superman, because there's a Richard Donner cut of the second Superman that was the originally filmed version, and it's better than both of those movies. And I'm not a huge fan of the first Superman. Like, I don't think it's bad, but people praise it.
Well, they praise it because of the time. Yeah,
and I get it, and it's the first movie. It's the first one.
It's kind of like the first Batman. You actually look back at the first Batman.
I love the first Batman.
I love it, but you can see a lot of flaws in it. Like, for example, like I still to this day, every time I watch it, every time I see Harvey Dent on the screen, I'm like, that's what they messed up. They messed up badly. There's no continuity when it comes to Harvey Dent. And then like Commissioner Gordon, like he doesn't even like look like any Commissioner Gordon I can even think of in the comic books. You know what I mean? Like nothing close to it. So there was a lot of things that are wrong, but people were able to look past it because it's the same situation. It's the first, like we said, with X-Men, same situation. First Spider-Man. There's always that first groundwork where the first is always going to be better. But once they start making better films, because in my eyes now, Dark Knight is the pivotal Batman film in my eyes forever.
Dark Knight is the pivotal superhero film in my eyes forever. And Avengers is the pivotal team-up movie.
Yep.
That's where I'm going. And Endgame is the perfect culmination, showing you what building of event could lead up to, which is something that Star Wars should have took some friggin' notice of, because
I agree.
they built up a story that was like, okay, you're like, yeah, and then no.
And see, and still to this day, when you pop in Endgame and watch that scene where he's like, Cap to your left, and all of a sudden you see it, and then he brings in like they all
that's
come,
epic.
I know.
What? You want to know how I rewatched that movie? I'm just gonna tell you right now. People are gonna say I'm an idiot. I literally start the movie from that point when they Avengers come.
I know. No. Okay, my first part is actually not right there. My first part is when Thanos has Thor pinned against the rock, and all of a sudden you think he's grabbing the hammer in his cap, and then I fast forward right to the part where he's like on your left, and all of a sudden they all come out. And then
okay, that fight scene is what I meant. Like the beginning of that fight, I don't watch the rest of the movie. Every time fucking Tony Stark dies, I cry again.
I do. I cry, and like every single time they all come out, and then he says "Avengers assemble," and I'm like, I get goosebumps every time. I'm like, oh my god! I'm like a 5-year-old, like jumping out of his shell.
You can't. Ant-Man in Giant Man mode. Captain Marvel actually being useful.
I love how she comes in too. Like at least they didn't overpower her to make her overpowered. They let her come in later, which I did like that they did that, because she's basically the Superman of their world, and for her to be there in the beginning, I felt like she would have won it off the bat. You know what I mean? So for her to come in late when they were kind of in a bad situation was epic. And
Thor is equally, if not more powerful than her. Well, Thor, though, they've always used him in a way where he made so much sense that it's kind of crazy, because I always feel like DC has a hard time figuring out what to do with Superman.
Yeah.
But Thor has always been that until Infinity War, which the only part of Infinity War to me that was like amazing was the Thor story. It was so good. Mm-hmm. And his coming to the point where he was like, forget all of this. I'm going in full beast mode and I'm going to destroy anything that gets in my way. All the way to getting his hammer or the axe. He destroyed everybody on the path there. And then on the way home, he literally, like, what did he do? Didn't he take a beam from a sun, from an exploding star to, like, build it? And then he came back and he was like, nah, it's over. And he would have killed Thanos too, but Thanos just got the snap off. And then in the second, in Endgame, when he's like, forget this, and he just cuts Thanos off.
It's epic.
But it shows you that this whole time Thanos was not OP. He was just using the gauntlet.
He was properly using the gauntlet for the long time. And see, that was the whole situation too. Was that that's what I also loved is like even with that Thor situation, you incredibly saw that, because remember they start off the movie focusing on Thor, because remember Thor's there, captured, and we have Loki like finally doing a redemption, and then you see Loki die, and the way Loki died, oh man, gut wrenching to see his body fall, and they zoom in on Thor's face. And Thor, even though they weren't blood, like that look of like terror in his face, like fuck, like I'm about to kill you. And that was what fueled the whole thing for everyone to go, fucking put that thing in his fucking chest, kill Thanos. Like you cheered for Thor to kill him because his father and his brother were dead. It's like he had nothing else to live for.
Yeah,
you know
and not to mention that he literally threw Hulk a beatdown.
Yep. And by the way, I don't know if we still are watching to talk about overrated films.
Hey, whatever. We ended up in a good spot. Listen, we're just going to tell everybody here, you didn't think you could do this, and you seem to like pretty much be enjoying this episode. Anyways, I don't really have anything else.
No, we did pretty good on it. And again, everything does culminate now, because I will say this. When we talk about overrated films, you got to keep in mind that, even though Guardians of the Galaxy 2 sucked, we now are leading into Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and guess who's there? Thor. I can't wait for that. I can't wait to see Thor as part of the Guardians. It's going to be crazy. But, I do agree on some. Of course, we're going to disagree on some things as well.
Yeah, and it's like I said, the one we mostly disagree on, I don't even think it's bad. I have a great time with Deadpool 2. I just think in comparison to the first one, it's not as good. It is funnier. It is more fun as a movie in the whole. It's more of like an adventure. Where the second one didn't really have a really great plot. It was like save the girl. But I still think the story and the characters were stronger development-wise.
I think the reason why I will still side with Deadpool 2, even being a little bit, I mean, even though I will put Deadpool 1 just because it's the same thing as a Superman syndrome. Superman's better, Deadpool 1 is better, that kind of thing. The reason I still put it there is because I feel like I got way more of the Deadpool I would loved in the comic books that in Deadpool 2, you know, because Deadpool 1, you were getting a little bit of that, but they didn't want to push it to the limit because they were afraid people would not walk out of the theater saying this is too stupid, you know. And then when 2 came out, they're like, oh, people love this? Let them go crazy. And when they did that, I was like, this is what I want.
Well, hopefully we get a third one.
Oh, yeah, that's
It's
a
not
whole other
looking
podcast.
good.
That's a whole other podcast altogether. And I would love to actually, that's a podcast for next week, guys. If you want me to do I got an idea for a podcast, maybe synopsis for or comic movies that we want from the comic books.
Okay. Yeah.
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 So I'm down to do something like that. If you guys are interested, make sure you hit that like button and comment below. Hey, we want more.
Yeah. Like, comment, subscribe,
Exactly.
and do your fellow gear putty pop into Pippin Poppins.
Yep. Well, I am Puttyman. I own a channel called Gamer Potheads, also on social media called Gamer Potheads, but I am Puttyman as well. And you guys can go check me out over there. And this is RLG2. Yep. There you go.
All right. Peace out.